The Jaywalkers Recovery Podcast is meant to provide support and inspiration for those on a journey of recovery. We are not affiliated with any specific 12-step groups. Our goal is to share personal experiences and insights that may be helpful to listeners in their own recovery process. Please consult with a healthcare professional or therapist for personalized advice and guidance. Thank you for listening and welcome to the Jaywalkers Recovery Podcast. This is Kevin with the Jaywalkers Recovery Podcast. Today in the studio is Alen T with a sobriety date, November 1st, 2020. How you doing this morning, Alen?
Wonderful, Kevin. Thanks for having me. Beautiful morning in Oregon. Excited to be here.
Yeah, obviously I've got a lot of good men to choose from in our home group, and you are one of them. I really haven't heard your story. Just been trying to pluck people from the meeting, get their story that I haven't heard fully. And you are one of them, and I'm excited to hear your story today. Why don't you kick us off? Maybe talk a little bit maybe about your childhood, or maybe the first time you drank or used, partying in high school, whatever that might be. Why don't you kick us off with that?
Perfect. All right. I'm Alen. I'm an alcoholic. So I grew up in a small town in Kansas. Shout out Garnett, Kansas, south of Kansas City, about an hour. Childhood for me was, I had a loving family, but I did have divorced parents who divorced when I was at a young age. I have a father who also struggles with addiction, and two sisters that also struggle with addiction. But for most of my life, I kind of thought that the addictive gene had skipped me, but found out that's incorrect. So at a young age, parents got divorced. I was living with my mom, two sisters, and my grandmother in Kansas City. So that's really the majority of my upbringing was an all-women household. And, I really secluded myself a lot at a young age. And, I had plenty of fun, was well-loved. It wasn't a question of that, but I was certainly like an introverted young kid, I would say. Fast forward a bit into really when I'd say alcohol in that age that, I guess before we get there, at early teens, probably 12 or so, I had been around drinking. I recall being at a party and, taking a drink of beer and all and kind of like saying, wow, that tastes good at like 12. And, and all the adults at the party were like, oh my God, he's going to be a wonderful kid. And, and all thought it was funny. So, I kind of almost at an early age realized I liked that attention that, that alcohol gave me. But fast forward to around the age of 16, and that's really when I got drunk at this farm party, and just really felt the warm blanket of beer and the wonderful feelings. I remember it like it was yesterday, and man, I really loved alcohol, and it took me out of my shell, kind of my introverted shell that I had, and really made me a social butterfly. And I was plucked out of my kind of boring by myself land and into this fantasy land that I was just the bee's knees, and everybody loved me and I loved them, and I was the funniest person, and life was good. And really a lot of that kicked off at 16, and at where I'm from in Kansas, we just do a lot of booze cruising and country cruising and driving around back roads and slamming beers and playing the stop sign game, tossing your beer cans out the window, hitting signs, and it really was a lot of fun. And if it wasn't completely dangerous, and obviously alcohol is bad for you. It was, I don't know. It was a blast. And that's what we did for fun in that small Kansas town. So through that time, I had, had become kind of my lifestyle. I was living alone as a 16-year-old freshman in high school, and just partying a tremendous amount, kind of gaining in popularity with the upperclassmen, and because I kind of lived alone, so we could always party at my place. And throughout that time, though, I had accumulated 3 MICs, minor consumptions. And, so it was telling already from a young age that I had this disease. And one of the bigger ones I'll share is I was a freshman, 16, and it was prom night. And me and another friend, we drove up to a place called Stoll, Kansas, and it's the cemetery in a small town that's supposedly like one of the gateways of hell. And, you can look it up on Google. And there's this tombstone there with the name Stoll, Stull, on it. And we had booze cruised all the way up to this cemetery. And by the time we had gotten there, we were already pretty toasted. And we were looking at this tombstone like, well, let's just take the thing. So we take this tombstone in the back of my truck and, continue to parade around the back roads and party it up. Things, obviously, we're just getting more and more drunk driving through the night. But I ended up running over 20 stop signs and mailboxes, several mailboxes, just completely rebellious idiot, to say the least. It's kind of funny to look back on now, but I mean, just no supervision. I was, hell-bent and crazy, really. But, I was going through, that had happened. And then in high school, well, it was like the next week of school, and, it's starting to pick up around school that, oh yeah, Alen had taken a tombstone. And, the KBI, Kansas Bureau of Investigation, was on to me. And, I just remember being in English class and my English teacher writing like, who steals a tombstone? And just being like, oh God. And everybody's laughing. And, I don't know, not a good way to gain popularity, but, anyway, a big, kind of telling sign that, I had some problems. And, so it really, at the time, if I could look back and kind of think of, how I was around that time, I had a God-sized hole in my chest, and alcohol filled it perfectly. And, I obviously didn't know that then, but I was just living alone and really isolated, and my life was built around partying and friends that did like-minded things, similar to myself. But fast forward a little bit in my junior and senior year of high school, and I had gained in popularity and was a popular kid, and was really good in football. I guess really good in quotations. I guess for a Kansas small town kid, good in football. That had kind of shielded me really from this God-sized hole that I felt, just being popular and accepted in school. And it kind of made the normal in a sense insecurities that a young high schooler would go through. And so I had really just, that became my identity, was party hard, kind of make an ass out of myself. And I had accumulated a lot of friends. Well, at this time, it was still just a lot of fun for me. And I had started a relationship in my senior year of high school that was a long, looking back, toxic relationship. And, we had gone through senior year of high school, and then we went to the same university. So we dated all through university. And at university, I was, playing football, which I loved. And I was in a fraternity and continued to party like an animal. It just, when you're like voted in your fraternity number one to black out and still be functioning, that's a telling sign too that you've got a problem. And so after college, it was my first job had taken me to Las Vegas, and at this time I was in a relationship with this woman for 6 years, and really, looking back, had a lot of codependency with her. And so my job takes me, and we were living together in Kansas City. They take me and move me out to Las Vegas. And it was when I was in Vegas, kind of alone and away from all my partying friends, that we had broken up shortly after I moved to Vegas. So it was a young, brokenhearted guy in Vegas, like 5 minutes from the Strip, and it was me and alcohol, and that was it. So, that's really when alcohol had its hold on me, and that's when drinking alone had just taken off. And so many nights that looking back then, it's really sad to think about. I would go to work, get a bottle, crush the bottle, and just completely heartbroken. I was devastated. Like, this is absolute rock bottom. And I just knew I had to do something. I had to get out of the mess that I was in. And so I ended up moving to Nebraska with this woman's family. And it's not really a good way to get over a relationship. One, with alcohol, but two, by living in in a situation where that person still appears in your life. And so that's at age 23. So really from 23 to 28, it was really just living life as a heartbroken person. And was there fun times? Of course, there were a lot of fun times mixed in there, a lot of kind of sad times. And really the overlying theme is that alcohol was both my pick me up when I was sad, and both my go-to when I wanted to celebrate, anything, or just the mundane in life. It was always the alcohol. And I could never just be alone with my own thoughts. I had to have something to either numb or to celebrate. It was never just okay to be me. And really, I didn't know who I was. And, right around that time, I had, as I mentioned, sisters and parents in recovery. And, I had seen the benefits of recovery in their life. So it had kind of pushed me into, I went to a meeting around 25 in Kearney, Nebraska. And while at this meeting, it was roughly 15, I would say, elderly people. And, sharing kind of at that meeting that I, was struggling with alcohol. And we had left the meeting, and they're all smoking cigarettes out front. And this old woman comes up to me and she says, "We're your friends now." And I was like, "No way." No way. Nope. I'm going back to the bar. So life was not bad enough at that time. I almost got just used to living kind of heartbroken, and I just couldn't get over that. I just couldn't get over it. And like years had gone by. Even then, I was like, why can't I get over this thing? And so finally, I have enough sense to kind of leave the situation I'm in. Although they were wonderful people that I was with in Nebraska, like, I love them still. They took care of me, but I just had to break away. So around 26, I had moved back to Kansas City, back to all my kind of hometown friends and college friends. And, it's still, so we've talked about the kind of the heartbreak. I was just trying to get back into a relationship. I desperately wanted to be in a relationship and loved and be loved, or to love someone else. And I just couldn't, after that 6-year relationship, I had several probably month-long relationships, and, I would see one thing wrong with that person and would, not good enough for me. I'm moving on. And if they had anything to say about like my partying ways, I would, of course, pick the booze over whatever they had requested of me. So ultimately, I just couldn't figure out how to be in a relationship. And, a lot of that was the numbing of alcohol that had, really that was my priority. And it really was just how selfish I was throughout the whole time. I didn't realize how selfish I was, but I was just extremely selfish, probably codependent guy, and just hadn't made it over that breakup. So continuing life like this, and then COVID happened, and that's really, our disease is progressive, right? It just gets stronger and stronger. And when COVID had happened, it was, I think a lot of people had started to drink more, but especially myself. And I had went to a college buddy's place, and we were partying it up, and taking Adderall and smoking pot. And on the way home, I finally got a DUI, and I was like so thankful for this DUI. I'd blown a .24, which is significant. I think the Adderall had kind of counterbalanced everything, so it was kind of well functioning. And I remember the cop walking up to the window, and he's like, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" I was like, "No," and he's like, "Well, you have a beer in your cup holder," and I was like, I probably should have tried to hide that at least. So I go to jail. My dog is in jail with me because it's COVID times, and they don't hold me for long, but I end up just calling an ex-girlfriend, and she picks me up, and, and this kind of this lonely, heartbroken saga continues. And, it was finally enough, though. I was like, God, this sucks. And one of the biggest things for me to getting over alcohol was that I could not have a relationship. Like, I didn't know how, and I didn't have feelings that elicited me to want to be in a relationship, or I wanted to be in a relationship, but they wouldn't allow me to be in a relationship. And, it was just so confusing, and I just didn't know any other way. My sisters could continue to urge me to try to just go to sobriety and AA, and finally the DUI was enough to say, okay, I'm going to give this thing another shot, and hopefully it's not a bunch of elderly people that tell me they're going to be my friends. And I go to this meeting in Kansas City, and it's a bunch of younger people. Like, I can relate. And the first time going in those rooms shortly after my DUI, I started to hear people share some genuine, heartfelt shares, and really give me some kind of hope that, okay, there is something to this sobriety thing. And, it was in those meetings that I got to kind of share about that relationship that had just had a hold on me. Like, I was a slave to these thoughts and feelings that I just couldn't let go. And within a few weeks and months of going to these meetings, I had finally got to share and feel some relief from that. And I was, it was just incredible. So I started working the steps, right? and admitting that I was an alcoholic, and I couldn't do this alone. So I really lean into my faith and going to church. And so that's a part of my story as well. I'm a Christian and a big believer in Jesus. And it was in those few months where my sober curiosity had really expanded into, I really enjoy this kind of life where I can go into these rooms and share what I'm really feeling. And there's a lot of benefits to me emotionally from this program. It was roughly 4 months in that I kind of got the, I don't think I have a problem. This was kind of easy. It shouldn't have been this easy if I were, a real alcoholic. And so relapse is a part of my story. And about 4 months in, I remember texting my buddies and just being like, guys, I'm coming back out. Let's have a party. And I had a sponsor at the time who was just like, yeah, man, I'm going to give this another shot. And I'll preface this with, I had gotten up to step 4 and written out my, the resentments, and I'd kind of had a small, realizing that, I had a part in the hurts that I was experiencing. But step 5 with my sponsor didn't really go, I guess as I have experienced it to go after that session. So I had shared kind of one thing, and we kind of battled on that, and we didn't really get into the meat and potatoes of what I was really experiencing. So that kind of took me out, and I don't know if to blame it on that, but I didn't really get fully healed and a full step 5 of kind of sharing my resentments and hurts. So anyway, I went out for I call it a week-long whoopsie daisy of, just being a complete heathen. Once again, it picked up where I started off, and just at this point had a head full of AA, right? And when you have a head full of AA, drinking is no longer fun. And that was the biggest kick in the nuts, really, was, this isn't fun. I know that I'm not supposed to be doing this now. I know that I'm numbing my feelings, and it really sucked. And after a week of doing this and journaling really throughout that time, I had experienced what it was like to have a relationship with God, and through that 4 months of recovery. And in my journaling of that week long of relapse, it was very telling how I had no relationship anymore with my higher power. It was me by myself and in an isolated spot once again, and not sure what to do with all these feelings. And it was then that on November 1st, which is my sobriety date, and as a matter of fact, it's also my birthday, my 29th birthday, I had woken up, and it was it. I was on a stool, just laying on the table with, I think we had drugs and beer just everywhere. It was so it was Halloween. And, I was like, this is enough, man. This is enough. And it was finally that point, of, looking up to the heavens. Really, I remember doing that and being on the back patio too, shortly after that. And just like, God, you got to take this from me, because I can't do it. I can't do it alone. And, so that's ultimately where, my recovery and sobriety journey kind of really kicked off, that firm bedrock that I needed to just start making my way out of this mess. And so at that time, I went all in on the AA program, and got another sponsor, worked the steps, and really knew at this point that I'd really came to the consensus that I was an alcoholic. So going to AA, I think a big fear of AA, if I were to, think back to my thoughts at that time, was just the fear of what others would think about me. No one would date a sober person. That was ingrained in my head. No one would date a sober person. There's got to be, you got to be completely boring. You don't have any fun. And, I work in a corporate kind of setting, and, nobody would want to hang out with that weird sober guy is what I thought as a 29-year-old. And you're really coming into the rooms of AA, or just continuing to stick around the rooms of AA. I had made those sober friends in their 20s and realized, there's a lot of us, and there's a lot of genuine, like-minded people that have way more fun than sitting at a bar and just getting toasted. It was breaking down those walls and those lies in my head. And I just remember how genuine everyone was, and how everyone was just offering to help me. And it's such a blessing, really, that what we have, and this like disease, and how much others are willing to go to any lengths to help us out. So, for years I had struggled with this relationship. I had finally worked up through the steps to step 5, and my sponsor at that time, and really had shared the hurts that I had in this relationship. And, within probably 6 months of sobriety at this point, I just remember thinking, like, oh my God, I haven't thought about that person. Like, this is crazy. For years I couldn't get over that. And, it turns out when you take away the numbing substance, you can process your feelings. Like, who would have thought? So I was just able to talk about, my childhood, the breakup, my inability to have a relationship. I just spilled my gut out in those meetings, and it finally clicked for me. And so I really had a spiritual experience to really sum it all up. 2.5 years sober as of this recording, and life today is, for me, heavily faith focused. And I go to church. I read the Bible. It's a big part of my journey. Continuing to go to meetings. Went to a meeting last night. 2 to 3 meetings a week. I do have a sponsor, and it just remains of working on myself. It's not so much alcohol anymore. It's what the other. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the 7 deadly sins can be summed up in an acronym of PAGGLES, PAGGLES: pride, anger, gluttony, lust, envy, and sloth. So I think I got all 7 there. So anyway, I'm not drinking, but I struggle with one of those. I haven't had a drink in 3.5 years, but I've been angry within the last week. I haven't had a drink in the last 3.5 years, but I've had, lustful thoughts in the last week. It just continues to be that struggle. And kind of tying into lust a little bit, pornography. I was able to quit pornography almost 2 years ago now. And that ultimately was another huge revelation to me. How am I supposed to have a relationship with one woman if I'm looking through pornography at night, looking at several different women? It's how am I supposed to be a responsible adult if I'm warping my mind with alcohol? And the same thing with like pornography. How are you supposed to just get the things that you desire? And ultimately, about a year after I had quit pornography, I met the woman of my dreams. And it's kind of crazy, right? It's crazy how that works. I was able to finally kind of break through those. It's like invisible rope just holding me back from having a relationship. And lo and behold, when I started to work on myself through this program of AA, and admitting, that I had all these problems, it was a God thing. I had moved to the Bay Area in California and had met this woman, and she also had almost the exact same amount of sobriety as me. And I really learned what it was like to be in a relationship. And, we are currently engaged and as recently engaged, and it's just I can't put the words to how grateful I am for just meeting her and experiencing what it's really like to be loved, because I learned what it's like to love myself, and with that I was able to open up and be vulnerable, and same for her with her journey. It was just meshed perfectly, and so it's just one of the many benefits of this program, right? Like I had thought nobody would want to date me being a sober person, and it's completely false. And so my kind of have some takeaways from my journey, and it's really, you can't do this alone. Number one, you cannot do this program alone. I have so many friends reach out to me and say, "How did you do it?" And I say, "You got to go to meetings or talk to me, talk to somebody that's in this program, because you cannot do it alone." We can't outthink our own thoughts. It's one day at a time. It gets, it's repetitive for us in the program to hear that, but it really is one day at a time. I'll have friends that say, "I'm never drinking again," or you see Facebook posts of somebody that, maybe had a bad weekend, and they'll say, "I'm never drinking again." Just don't drink today. Start there. And again, your thoughts are bullshit. Just because you're sober doesn't mean you can't have fun. I think it's been said numerous times in this podcast, and I love that, because my life is so full today of hiking, of running, just normal coffee shop visits with friends, and we talk about life, and really just we don't cover it up for the just being idiots at bars anymore. We have genuine conversations, and it's just really heartfelt. And going to meetings and sharing, when we have a bad day, because that's when we would drink anyhow, right? We would drink over a bad day, and we get to go to meetings and share. And, we get to release those feelings, those emotions that are holding on to us. Getting a sponsor, working the steps, and obviously don't drink between meetings. And the biggest thing is it's progress, not perfection. I still have things that I struggle with, but life is so much better than it used to be. My struggles today are, I ate too much cheesecake last night, and it's not, I'm waking up on a Saturday morning, wondering what I did last night. It's so much easier than it used to be.
I struggle with that addiction as well.
Exactly, Kevin. I recall you sharing that in meetings, hiding in the garage, eating too many popsicles. So,
yeah, popsicles, ice cream. I meander over to Sonic after the meeting often and get ice cream and sit there and eat it by myself.
Yes, exactly.
Feeling a little guilty sometimes.
Totally. Oh, man. Yeah. Last night, cheesecake, it got me. So I woke up a little bit of a sugar hangover this morning, but you know what? Better than it used to be.
So, last thing, well, I got a couple things, but first, maybe there's someone new, or they're considering quitting drinking. They don't know how. What's some advice you could give the new guy?
The biggest thing is getting out of your comfort zone. It's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And that's how alcohol was for me. I had to go to a meeting, and I had to share what was really on my mind, and it was just circling in my head, and that I just couldn't get over. And that's the biggest thing, is talking to somebody about it, and being actionable, going to meetings, working the steps with a sponsor, and not drinking between meetings. And, some people can do this thing without AA. It's not, I can't. My fiance, she can do this thing without AA. God bless her. I can't do it without AA. So everybody has their own toolkit. And what worked for me was going to AA meetings.
All right. Last question. And I know the audience is wondering, what did you do at the tombstone?
About a week after holding on to this tombstone and the KBI coming to my house, they had shown pictures of all the trashed mailboxes and stop signs, and they just said, the tombstone had made the Lawrence paper. And ultimately, the KBI was like, they just want you to take the tombstone back. So me
and so you took the tombstone back and put it back.
Yes, we ended up. I had hid the tombstone out back in the country in Kansas, but we had picked up the tombstone, returned it to its place, and left it there. And fortunately, no charges were filed.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness is right. I mean, charges were filed for the mailboxes and stop signs, but the tombstone was returned.
Oh,
so,
that's good.
That's good.
I was like, man, you got some bad juju coming at
Seriously.
you.
Seriously. Yeah.
Alen, thank you for coming in and sharing your story today.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, Kevin.
Thanks for listening to the Jaywalkers Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can also join us on YouTube or Facebook for some bonus videos and pictures. Thanks again for tuning in.